Hi friends, I welcome you all to my channel Integrated Physiology with Babu. Hereafter, every week we are going to see physiology videos with the concept based and fact based theories. These videos will be useful for entrance preparing students and also to the undergraduate students. The first video is about oxygen transport in blood. We are going to see how oxygen is transported in the blood. First, we will see the overview about how oxygen is diffused from alveoli to the circulation. Then we will see how the oxygen is transported in the circulations. What are the various forms available to carry the oxygen to the tissues. This is the overview about the oxygen diffusion. This diagram explains you about how the oxygen is diffused from alveoli to the circulation, right? We know that oxygen is diffused from alveolus to pulmonary capillaries. The exchange takes place at the alveolo-capillary membrane, across the alveolo-capillary membrane. As we can see here, the PO2 present in the alveoli is about 104 millimeter of mercury. Always this diffusion follows the pressure gradient. Wherever the pressure gradient is available, oxygen diffuses from higher gradient to the lower area of where the pressure. Okay, so here the blood which is coming to the pulmonary arterial line, here the PO2 is about 40 millimeter of mercury. As we can see, there is a pressure gradient between the alveolus and the pulmonary capillaries. This gradient enables us the oxygen to get diffused. This diffusion is nothing but simple diffusion of oxygen takes place, and the oxygen is diffused from alveoli and it reaches the pulmonary circulation, and until an equilibrium develops between alveoli and the pulmonary capillaries, this exchange takes place. It means that until the PO2 in the pulmonary capillaries become 104, this diffusion will goes on. Once it becomes 104, the diffusion stops. Okay, right. So if you take the venous end, the PO2 of the pulmonary circulation in the venous towards the venous end is about 104 millimeter of mercury. But okay, after this pulmonary circulation reaches the left side of the heart. After that, it enters the systemic circulation. If you see the arterial side of the systemic circulation, the PO2 is not the same as that of in the pulmonary capillaries. Why, sir? The PO2 decreases to 95 millimeter of mercury. Why there is this much decrease in the PO2? There is evidence that before the pulmonary circulation leaves the lung, there is an physiological shunt takes place. Due to this physiological shunt, there is a venous admixture of blood to this oxygenated blood. So the PO2 decreases, and the PO2 at the arterial end in the systemic circulation is only about 95 millimeter of mercury. Okay, so this PO2 in the systemic circulation, it enters into the circulation, and while the tissues, it gives oxygen. Okay, oxygen is extracted from the systemic circulation, and towards the venous end, if we see the PO2 decreases drastically, and so that the PO2 will becomes 40 millimeter of mercury. The PO2 in the tissues also about 40 millimeter of mercury. Okay, so the point or the facts we have to aware of here in this the right point of time is that the PO2 is not the same as that of pulmonary capillaries and the systemic circulation. in the systemic circulation, PO2 decreases to 95 millimeter of mercury, while the PO2 in the venous end is 40 millimeter of mercury, and the pulmonary arterial end is 40 millimeter of mercury, and the tissues 40 millimeter of mercury. Okay, so we have seen about 3 values. One is 104 millimeter of mercury, that is the PO2 in the pulmonary capillaries, right? Immediately once the diffusion takes place, it is 104. But before the blood leaves the pulmonary circulation, there is a venous admixture. So venous admixture of deoxygenated with oxygenated blood, so PO2 decreases. So when we see the PO2 of the arterial end, the PO2 is roughly about 95 millimeter of mercury, and the PO2 in the venous end is 40 millimeter mercury, because oxygen is extracted from the circulation to the tissues, right? So this is the overview about how the diffusion takes place and how the oxygen reaches the tissues. Now we will go in detail how oxygen is transported, in what forms they are carried in the blood. So we are going to see how oxygen is transported. What are the 2 forms where oxygen is transported inside our blood? The 2 forms is nothing but, one is oxygen is transported along with the hemoglobin. I am writing as hemoglobin. And another one is oxygen is transported in the form of dissolved oxygen. Okay, so these are the 2 forms. Among these, which is contributing more in the transport of O2? If we take that, these oxygen transported along with the hemoglobin is major, that is 99%, while only 1% is transported in the form of dissolved oxygen. Okay, so you have to very clear that the oxygen is transported mainly in the form of hemoglobin, Okay, so if we see the structure of the hemoglobin, we have heme portion and we have globin portion. So heme plus globin is hemoglobin. It's nothing but it has polypeptide chains. The globin units consists of polypeptide chains. These polypeptide chains are alpha and beta. Alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1 and beta 2. So we kind of having 4 units in having alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1 and beta 2 chains. So we can write as alpha 2, there are 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains, okay, and each of these chains having the heme part, each of the polypeptide chain having the heme part. This heme part is nothing but it is the ion containing porphyrin complex. Ion containing porphyrin complex. This ion is in ferrous state. Important, the point to be noted is that ion is in the form of Fe2 plus, that is ferrous state. Okay, it is in the ferrous state. So we have how many kind of this, for to every chains we have this kind of group Fe2 plus, Fe2 plus and Fe2 plus, right? So in this, to this Fe2 plus, normally when oxygen is not available, histidine complex, histidine binds with this ion porphyrin complex and makes this structure like TENS or T configuration, or otherwise we call it as taut. That is, this binding is very taut, it does not allow anything oxygen to bind with it, okay. But when oxygen binds with this if oxygen binds with this ion. So oxygen binds with the ion in all the units. If the ion binds with these units, this histidine ferrous complex becomes relaxed. So this configuration changes to relaxed state, or we call it as R state. This is T state and this is R state. So the change of from T state to R state is occurred only by binding of oxygen to the ferrous state, ferrous ion. Okay. So another fact based question is that how many oxygen molecule can bind with one hemoglobin thing? As we can see, this hemoglobin structure is how many units? It has 4 units. So in each unit oxygen can bind. Oxygen can bind it in each unit. So we can write as Hb4O8. O8 is nothing but 4 oxygen molecule. Why we call it as 4? We have the 4 structures. So hemoglobin is always known as tetramer, or it has a quaternary structure. Okay. So this is about the hemoglobin and its structure and how the oxygen binds with the ion. The ion is nothing but it is in the state of ferrous. Ferrous is Fe2 plus. Okay. 4 molecule of oxygen is nothing but Hb4O8. Okay. If we take further, 1 gram of hemoglobin carries about 1.34 ml of oxygen. Consider 15 gram being the normal hemoglobin of an adult male. The oxygen carrying capacity, that will be his total oxygen carrying capacity, because all the hemoglobin, that is all the 15 gram is occupied with oxygen. So these all the hemoglobin molecule are used to transport the oxygen. So this is becomes your total oxygen carrying capacity is given by a formula 15 gram into 1.34 milliliter of oxygen, which will become 20.1 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood. Clear? So this will become your total oxygen carrying capacity. It means that all the oxygen binding sites of all the hemoglobin are occupied by the oxygen. On otherwise we can say it as 100% saturation. 100% hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen. That means all the binding sites of the hemoglobin are occupied with oxygen. Okay. This will takes place if our PO2 is high. Here high where we can get, we are getting in the pulmonary capillaries is nothing but approximately 100 millimeter of mercury. So indirectly we can say that this saturation depends upon, somewhat depends upon the partial pressure of the gas. Okay, if the partial pressure of the gas is high, the saturation of also will be high. Okay, so this 100% saturation will occur at very high PO2. Okay, okay. So then question arises. So what will be the, what do you name the oxygen carrying capacity or oxygen when it is arterial blood or the oxygen concentration in the venous blood? We call it that as oxygen content or oxygen concentration. Okay, we are going to see oxygen content and concentration both in arterial lane and venous lane. Okay, so because just now we have stated in the statement that the saturation somewhat depends upon the partial pressure of this gas, right? If we take the arterial lane, what is the PO2? PO2 is 95 millimeter of mercury. What is the PO2 in the venous lane? It is only 40 millimeter of mercury, right? So automatically our saturation is also decreased. What will be the saturation in the arterial lane? It is only about 97% of the hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen, because normally our blood has some inactive hemoglobin. This inactive hemoglobin can't be able to bind with oxygen, and also saturation also low, so automatically not all the hemoglobin can be able to bind with oxygen. So only 97% saturation is found in the arterial lane, while at the venous lane it is only about 75% saturation, is very low, right? Okay, also it is not that much low, it acts as some kind of a reserve. Okay, this 75% saturations. So this oxygen content or concentration we can derive from a formula is that percentage saturation into total oxygen carrying capacity is nothing but total oxygen carrying capacity. Okay, if we calculate for arterial lane, this 97% saturation, 97 point into 20.1, which will give the value 19.8 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood. If we calculate for venous lane, 75 by 100 into 20.1, which will give about 15.2 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood. Okay, so this we name it as oxygen content or oxygen concentration of the arterial lane is 19.8 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood. In the venous lane it is about 15.2 ml of oxygen per deciliter of the blood. Okay, from these two equations or from the two values we can come to know that how much oxygen is extracted or how much oxygen is delivered to the tissues actually, which is nothing but 19.8 minus 15.2, which is about 4.6 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood delivered to the tissues. Okay, 4.6 ml of, that is approximately 5 ml of oxygen is delivered to the tissues per 100 ml of blood delivered to the tissues. Okay, if we calculate for the total cardiac output, what will be the value? That is 5000 ml or the 5 liter is the cardiac output into arterial and venous and AV oxygen difference is nothing but approximately we can write 5. The value becomes 250 ml of oxygen per minute. So this becomes your total oxygen consumption. Total oxygen consumption will become the 250 ml of oxygen per minute. Okay, so from these calculations, definitely in the MCQs, definitely the value based MCQs can be expected in these topics. Okay, so here we can see that there is a relationship found between your PO2 and percentage saturation, right? We can find the relation between PO2 and the percent saturation of hemoglobin, right? If we put these two relation in a graph, we call that graph as oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Is nothing but we name it as oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, OHDC curve. OHDC curve, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay, first we are going to see what does this graph depicts as. This graph depicts as the relationship between partial pressure and what is the other one? Hemoglobin saturation. Nothing but we can write it as SaO2, that is saturation of oxygen, percentage saturation of oxygen, PO2. These two relations will give us the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay, first if we see the shape of the curve, it is looking like somewhat S-shaped, right? S-shaped or sigmoid shaped curve. Okay, this is looking like S-shaped or the sigmoid shaped curve. And if you see the graph, it is like this part is somewhat steep and this part becomes flat, right? So we have both flat portion in the curve and steep portion in the curve, right? The flat portion we otherwise call it as loading phase. This we call it as unloading phase. What it loads, sir? It loads oxygen. Where? It takes place in pulmonary capillaries. Unload. What is unload? Oxygen. Where? It unloads at the level of tissues. Okay. So the flat portion, loading phase, and it takes place at the pulmonary capillaries. Steep portion, the unloading phase, it takes place at the level of tissues. Also, in just a few minutes back, we have seen that when the PO2 is very high, what will be the saturation? The saturation will be high, and this takes place at the pulmonary capillaries. As with the pulmonary capillaries, the PO2 is high, and the percentage saturation is also will be high. As we see here, and as also we will see here, the PO2 and the saturation will be high. And also, the flat portion of the curve signifies us that until the PO2 becomes 60 millimeter of mercury, the change in the PO2 does not affect the percentage saturation greatly. Does not affect, because see, even with 100 also it's about 90, more than 90, and 70 it's also more than 90. So until the PO2 becomes 60, below 60, on the range of 60 to 100 and above, the saturation remains more or less same. Okay, so this gives us like kind of an safety thing that we can accommodate, or the hemoglobin can able to saturate with the oxygen even the PO2 becomes 60 millimeter of mercury. Okay, this is important in case of pulmonary capillaries. This is taking place in pulmonary capillaries. Rather, if you consider, if the PO2 becomes less than 40 millimeter of mercury, where it is? Towards the venous vein or towards the systemic capillaries, where your PO2 becomes decreases. Once the PO2 becomes decreases, automatically the saturation decreases. the saturation decreases. How the saturation decreases? Below 60 millimeter of mercury or in the low PO2 levels, the small change in the PO2 affects very much greater in the saturation. See here 40, the saturation will be around how much? Around 70, around 75. If we consider 30, how much? See how huge difference in saturation occurs. In the low PO2 levels, the small change in the PO2 affects your saturation much, because if the PO2 is decreases, like hemoglobin is not getting its oxygen, it is giving oxygen to the tissues because tissues has to survive. So in the low PO2, more oxygen is delivered to the tissues. That is, it is losing its affinity. Hemoglobin is losing its affinity towards oxygen and it is delivering to the tissues. Okay, so we can say that in high PO2 levels, good affinity, high saturation. In low PO2, less affinity, delivery to the tissues. Okay. In this graph, another notable thing is that P50 is that it is the partial pressure at which your hemoglobin is saturated, that is 50% saturated with oxygen. That is 50% saturation occurs at what PO2? That gives your P50. Normally it is about 27 millimeter of mercury. Okay, normally it's about 27 millimeter of mercury. Also, this P50 tells us the affinity. From the P50 value, we can tells us the affinity of the hemoglobin to the oxygen. If the P50 becomes increased, if the P50 value becomes increased, that is about 27, it is increased to about 50 millimeter of mercury, it indicates that affinity becomes decreases. If the P50 increases, affinity decreases. If the P50 decreases, affinity increases. So P50 and affinity towards hemoglobin are inversely proportional. If P50 value increases, affinity decreases. If the P50 increases, affinity decreases. If the P50 decreases, affinity increases. Okay, or we can say that P50 increases means the value from 27 shift towards this side, right? So automatically the curve where it is shifting, the curve is shifting to the right side. If the curve is shifting to the right side means the affinity decreases. So here we can write as curve shift to right. Here the curve shift to left. If the shift to left occurs, affinity increases. Okay, so this is one of the concept you have to understand. What is the relationship of P50 to that of the affinity of the hemoglobin to the oxygen? Okay. Now we will see some of the factors which will cause the curve shift to the right and shift to the left. Increase in H plus concentration or increase in CO2 and increase in temperature and increase in 2,3 DPG level, exercise, all these increases will shift the curve to the right side. If there is a decrease in all of these things, shift to left side. So remember, increase in H plus or increase in CO2, increase in temperature, increase in 2-3 dpg or exercise will lead to the shift the curve to the right side, while decrease in these factors will shift the curve to the left side. And another important point to be noted in this factor is that the shift of the curve to the right side only or especially due to increase in H plus concentration or increase in CO2. We call this as Bohr effect. Okay. The point to be noted is that only if the curve shifts to the right side due to increase in H plus or increase in CO2, we call that as Bohr effect, not the other increases as Bohr effect. Only if the curve shifts to the right side due to the increase in H plus concentration or increase in CO2, it means that this effect is called as Bohr effect. Okay, only this as Bohr effect. Okay, Bohr effect, or simply we can write shift to the right side curve due to increase in H plus or increase in CO2. Remember that. Okay. Okay. We will see how this Bohr effect occurs. Okay, simply within a diagram. This will be your tissues, and this will be your vessels. Here CO2 is produced. The CO2 is gets to the tissue blood vessels, where blood vessels we have water. We have combined to form H2CO3 dissociates into H plus H plus CO3 minus, right? Here oxygen is delivered with along with hemoglobin. This, what does this acid cause? This acid cause release of the oxygen to the tissues, and automatically the H plus will bind with hemoglobin and it will buffer the acidity produced due to this increased H plus. So hemoglobin acts as a good acid buffer, right? So this is where it acts as a buffer, that this H plus causes the dissociation of the hemoglobin oxygen binding, and it causes oxygen delivered to the tissues, and H plus binds with the hemoglobin and it buffers this increase in acidity. Okay, so either increase in CO2 or increase in H plus, what does it cause? It causes release of oxygen to the tissues. Okay, that is, it is decreasing this affinity. Decreasing affinity, which side shift of the curve? Right side shift of the curve. So right side shift of the curve due to the increased in H plus or increased in CO2, we call that as Bohr effect. Okay, we call that as the Bohr effect. Okay. 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 Another, we have seen that the second form which is carried the oxygen. What is the second form? That is the dissolved form. Oxygen in the dissolved form. How much percentage? Only 1%. If you see the dissolved form, it obeys Henry's law. What does Henry's law states that? It means that the dissolved oxygen is directly proportional to partial pressure of the gas. If the partial pressure of the gas, dissolved oxygen will be more. If the partial pressure is low, dissolved oxygen will be low. It is given by the formula also. This is solubility coefficient, which is K constant in product of partial pressure of the gas. Okay, this product or this constant value is found to be 0.03 milliliter of oxygen per deciliter of blood per millimeter of mercury. Okay. If we calculate for 100 millimeter of mercury, that is in pulmonary capillaries, the values will be 0.3 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood. If we calculate for the systemic arterial blood, what will be the value? The value is nothing but the product into PO2. What will be the PO2 in the systemic arterial side? Is nothing but 95. So the value will become 0.28. If we calculate the venous end, how much? This is ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood. Okay. So 0.03 into how much? This is 40. 40 is the PO2 in the venous end, right? So how much? 0.12 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood. Okay. So the final point here noted is that the resolved form only 1%, it obeys Henry's law, that is the product will be, the formula is product of Ks into PO2, the value will be 0.03 ml of oxygen per deciliter of blood per millimeter of mercury. Okay. This completes the today's topic.